Whether it's a neighborhood pond or a secret hole stuffed way back in the woods that you love to fish, summertime fishing can be some of the toughest fishing there is if you don't know what to use or how to use it. Today I put together 5 baits that are guaranteed to dominate the summer bite. All right, so the very first one is probably the most fun. It's the one that gets a lot of people addicted to fishing. It's just a lot of fun to fish early in the morning, late in the evening, or when it's cloudy, and that is some type of a frog. This right here is a JDM frog. You can find it on Tackle Warehouse. I'll leave the link down in the description. I know they're out of them, but it is what it is. Let's talk about what to fish it on. We fish it on a heavy to a medium heavy rod. This is a little bit lighter frog, but most hollow body frogs, you want to fish them on a heavy rod with 50 to 65 pound braid, a high speed reel, and that's about it. I mean, it's pretty simple. You throw and cast along the bank early in the morning when those bass are up cruising, trying to feed up before it gets too hot. And then the minute the sun hits the water, they go away and you switch to something else. Let's talk about what that something else is. The next one is probably the one that I've been fishing the longest, and it's one of my favorites, and I'll always fish it, and that is a Texas rig worm. Summertime, choose red worms. I don't know what it is about red, but it works. Straight shank hook will get you in and out of cover, especially if you're in a grassy lake and stuff like that. Really, really good. You can use an EWG, that's no big deal. Bullet weight and a peg stop or some type of a bobber stopper to keep that weight from sliding up and down. It will get hung up in cover a lot less. The line, 12, 15, 17, 20 pound test fluorocarbon. Monofilament, really doesn't matter. You're flipping it in, you're gonna get bites in ponds and stuff like that. High speed reel, 7-speed or an 8-speed reel, a medium heavy rod, and you're set to go. Take it, flip it around cover, work it into the thick stuff, drag it on the bottom. You can do anything with this bait and this rig. Just go out, and the biggest thing to remember is when you get bit, reel down a couple of times and set the hook hard. You got to get that hook to penetrate through that worm and get into that fish's mouth, and a bass's mouth, especially a big one, is really, really tough. So set the hook hard and bring in the big one. So here's a bait that a lot of people don't think about when fishing ponds. It's one that if it's cloudy, if it's low light conditions, if it's windy, or if you've got a lot of shallow cover you've got to work through and you don't want to spend your whole day getting hung up, it is perfect for this, and that is actually a swim jig. I know a lot of people say, oh no, it's a jig. I don't know how to fish a jig. I've got no confidence in it. This is not a real jig. It's not one you drag on the bottom. You cast it out and you wind it in. Match it up with the right trailer and everything else, and you're good. Now with ponds, the main forage is bluegill. See, I almost always throw a green pumpkin or some type of a bluegill colored swim jig. Take it, parallel cast it to the bank, bring it through that cover, and just crack them when they bite. Now, the rod, the reel, and the line is key. You've got to match up the right line and the right everything, or you're going to break off a lot of fish. So, a medium heavy fast or a medium heavy extra fast rod, a high speed reel, 7-3 to 1, 8-3 to 1, or 8 something to 1, it really doesn't matter. And then 20 pound test fluorocarbon, or you can probably get by with 15 or 20 most of the time. But just remember, you're going to be setting that hook hard, and those fish are going to be in heavy cover, and you're going to have to try to force them out. So make sure you match all that up. All right, so the next one is basically how it all got started for me, and that is the Zoom Fluke or any type of a jerk bait, soft jerk bait style bait. It's one of those things that when you're fishing ponds, you can cover the bank and be able to cast and parallel down the bank, and you can see fish react to it because you're fishing it super shallow. I wouldn't fish it in the middle of the day when the sun's up high, but low light conditions, windy conditions, stuff like that, you'd be just fine. Look for cover, fish it around cover. It could come through it pretty good, but if you get bit in thick stuff, you're liable to get broken off because you're only using about 15 pound line, 15 at the most, maybe even 12 pound test, fluorocarbon or monofilament. EWG hook, a 4/0 or 5/0 EWG hook, a swivel up front to prevent your line from getting too twisted when fishing it. It also gives you a little bit of weight and helps you keep it down a little bit. A medium fast or a medium heavy moderate rod and a 7-speed reel is about all you need. Zoom Fluke can get around a lot of cover but it pulls fish and it draws fish away from where they're hiding and gets you to be able to see them and know they're there. The biggest key is once you feel that bite, you got to give it a couple of seconds before you set the hook and you'll catch them. All right, so the next bait. Now this bait is one that if I only was allowed to have one bait to fish a pond anywhere in the country, it would be this one. Matter of fact, I did a video a long time ago with Kicking Their Bass TV where we fished his pond that he grew up on, and we challenged each other to a 2-hour fish off, and all I grabbed was a Ned rig. I literally grabbed a bag of TRDs, put them in my pocket, a couple of extra jig heads, and I walked that lake, and I beat him by one fish. But a Ned rig is one of those things that is great in a farm pond, but you got to fish it right. Okay, when you get to a pond like this, most ponds have really, really soft bottom, and anything that you fish on the bottom is going to sink into the muck, and the bass aren't going to be able to get to it. So the key to this one is keep it off the bottom. So you cast out, you let it sink to the bottom, and then you start to reel really slow, and you just wiggle your rod tip as you're reeling it. And those fish that are down deep, especially in the middle of the sun of the day when it's really hot, the ones that are down deep will just come up and grab it, and you set the hook. Now the key is the rod and the reel and the line. So the rod is a 7'3" medium or a medium heavy spinning rod. I prefer a medium just because you're typically fishing this on 10-pound test or 8-pound test fluorocarbon. You just don't get broke off. Now, when you're using a spinning reel, like this Cast King spinning reel, you want to, years ago, I was against putting braid on reels for some stupid reason. I'm not that way anymore. Put yourself some mainline braid, 10-pound, 15-pound, or 20-pound test braid. It'll reduce the amount of problems you have with a spinning reel. And then learn a good connection knot to be able to put a leader on there. I use an FG knot. Some people use an Albright knot or an Alberto knot and stuff like that. Just learn a really good knot and use it. It makes a difference. I only have one size Ned head that I use, and that's the 1/10 ounce. I don't really play around with the different sizes. I just don't see a reason to really worry about that light of a weight. But I almost always have a TRD on there. No reason to fish anything else for me. I just get a lot of bites on it, and that's it. But a Ned rig is one of those things where if you can't catch them on anything else, you get out here and you'll catch them, and you might even catch a big bluegill at that. So grab it. But that's all the baits I have for pond fishing in the middle of the summertime. I know it's hot as heck. Guys, drink a lot of water, do all that crazy stuff that a medic in the Army would tell you to do. But like I always say, be sure to introduce somebody to fishing. Introduce them to my channel. Let me help you teach them how to fish. More importantly, get out on the water, go out and catch some fish, and have a great day. We'll see you. Oh, son of a gun. There's a hole there. I almost went swimming.